This week on the Droids, we're back to the light of the Jedi, chapters 24 to 28. That's all we're talking about all this week on the Droids. Welcome back to the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Alongside Chris and Sam, I am Mike, and what a pleasure it is to be with both of you. I have to say that when the pandemic does come to an end, I'm only going to imagine myself as being very much a Buryaga in a crowded group of drinks where everyone's trying to socialize, and I have got nothing to say. I just want to be somewhere else, but I have to mingle. I have to act like I want a cocktail. Basically, Buryaga is my spirit animal for post-pandemic times.
I can see it. So, and see, I'm thinking about post-pandemic, how badly I want to be in the crowd of people drinking.
Yeah, no, I think I'll be a little weirded out.
For sure. No, that's a good point.
Honestly, when I speak, I assume most people think I'm just making Wookiee sounds anyhow. So,
do either of you guys know off the top of your head what episode number this is?
Episode of our podcast?
Yeah.
I have it right here in front of me, 164. Yep.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's incredible. First of all, kudos to us. Really good job. That's amazing. Also, after 164 episodes, I was just wondering something. We do the sound, the power up sound at the beginning of every episode, and like, should we have like reversed that and made it like the Obi-Wan powering down the deflector shield sound? Would it be like boom?
I feel like that's when the pod ends.
Yeah.
I think that's
okay.
the literal
That could be,
end of the pod.
That's episode 999.
So what you're saying, Mike, is that this pod represents the powering up of a Death Star of sorts? Okay. Great. Terrific.
You know,
love it.
A lot of us came from different planets where we were slaves.
Yeah.
And then, no, wait, don't go down that moral line.
Yeah.
It's, I want to say, Sam, you bring it up. That's kind of pretty fortuitous that you brought up that this is episode 164. This is the 4-year anniversary to the day.
Wow.
To the day as this
true?
episode is released.
Is this the true statement?
4-year anniversary of the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. March 26, 2017 at 12:02 p.m. The first episode went live. We were just Chris and Mike at that point talking Star Wars, and then we brought along this other dead weight, Chris.
Sam.
Can't even bother to show up for the last couple of months.
Wait, what are you talk about Attack of the Clones or something? What is this?
Maybe I'll
and also, Sam,
clones.
Mike, should we let him on the podcast officially? Ryan and Sam have never been invited officially.
Yeah, I think it's time.
I don't know. You think it's time? Okay.
What?
Have I been, I'm sorry. Have I been an intern this whole time?
Yeah, no. We've always said and or with, and Sam with Ryan.
So yeah, Ryan and I have the and with credits. Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
featuring.
Is the ritual that we dip them in carbonite and then make them watch Solo? So like all of their body is frozen except for their eyes, and then they have to watch Solo on a loop?
Mike and I were really just waiting for you and Ryan to say that Solo is your favorite Star Wars movie.
That's what
it never happened.
If you were encased in carbonite except for your eyeballs, that's...
Wouldn't that be cool?
Ugh.
I'm on board with that.
Kind of like
that's worse than summer in Mustafar.
Ooh, yikes! The mosquitoes are bad.
Well, I do have to say.
So this is our last episode. Is that?
Yeah, this is the power down. Is at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
No! I just got made a full member.
Yeah, that's. It is a pleasing sound when he shuts those things off,
isn't it?
I think it might be my favorite sound in Star Wars.
It's very good. That little meter goes down.
Yeah.
If this were a higher profile Star Wars podcast, we'd have that audio actually play in this moment.
That's right.
But
that's right.
We don't have a Patreon. We don't have the kind of money.
Did Mads teach him how to do that?
I'd have to think so. It was part of the message.
Yeah.
It got out to Jin and somehow to Obi-Wan, and that's how he learned how to do it.
Right.
But with this being the 4-year anniversary, wow, I mean, think about how much has changed, and just so much fun with this podcast over the years. But we are looking forward to, Chris, the launch of the Droids, relaunch of the Droids Destination website, where you can go through a back catalog of all of our favorite episodes of our series. This is going to be up soon. But it just reminds me of like some of my favorite episodes, our Last Jedi reaction, the Colin Trevorrow breakdown of the leaked script of those 6 episodes, our recaps of The Mandalorian, our instant reactions to Solo, as well as The Rise of Skywalker. There's a lot of great stuff in the back catalog. If you're a new listener, give it a shot. Take a look. Maybe listen to episode 1 way back on March 26, 2017. Hear what we thought back then.
I mean, I was going to say, you could probably just skip ahead to the parts where, like, Sam and Ryan...
Well, Ryan is in episode 3, so I don't know what you're talking about, Sam.
We call those we call those expanded universe.
those are podcast legends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ryan and Sam, podcast legends.
Did you decanonize all the stuff I said?
Oh, yeah. After we got bought by Disney, that's what happened. Mike and I were 2 episodes in, and then...
Yeah, it was that good. It was that good. Well, we are excited about that, Chris. We look forward to it. But also make sure you follow us, DroidsPod on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, DroidsPod on TikTok. A lot of fun stuff there. Haven't updated in a while, but we'll get back to getting some updates on TikTok as well. YouTube, the Fallen Order playthrough. You do not want to miss it. Ryan's not here, but we have to tell you it is the best content you'll find out there. And droidspod@gmail.com. Send us an email. Write us a review. Please rate and review us on iTunes. We really appreciate if you let us know what you think of the podcast. If you put a review in there, it helps us get a little bit more notice in the crowded Star Wars podcast space. So we would be forever in your debt if you were to do that for us. But let's get into it. Chapters 24 through 28, The Light of the Jedi, High Republic, where we left off. We met the Santeca family on Naboo, with a little bit of Avar Kriss and Elzer Mann doing some interrogation. They were hiding a little bit of info. They'd made their money off of that hyperspace navigation charting that they'd done. And here in Chapter 24, we learn a little bit more about the Santecas. Marie Santeca, who is ancient, according to the story we hear about the Nihil and the Marchian Row, the eye of the Nihil, and how he's kind of kept her alive like his father before him, to use her for finding the paths throughout hyperspace. And I think we learn a little bit more throughout this set of maybe what happened to the Legacy run. But what was the thought of both of you when you learned about this setup for Marie Santeca, who is kind of drugged up in her medical bay, keeping things going, getting totally lost in the bliss of finding paths through hyperspace? What were your thoughts?
This reveal was very effective for me. I think, it's been a minute since we recorded, and it's been many minutes since I've been on, but I think I said with the Nihil that I was a little less interested in them as villains than I wanted to be. I was a little less interested in Marchian Row than I wanted to be. And I kind of was expecting from his introduction and the way the book was sort of going prior to this chapter, I was expecting that he was going to have some kind of a turn. He had a plan to that would somehow undermine the Nihil, and that he would be secretly kind of a good guy or something. And man. Yeah. Talk about being wrong. I thought this was a surprise, and also so effective. I mean, this is shooting the dog in the beginning, to get you on this. I mean, taking an old, enfeebled, woman who we see moments of joy, and realizing that it's not just the imprisonment or effective imprisonment and drugging, but the actual cruelty and the joy taken in the cruelty is really effective for making me hate this guy.
It's very bizarre. Yeah, it reminded me of the latest Star Trek series that's on was it CBS Now? What is that? I don't know.
I believe that
Paramount Plus now.
Paramount Plus now. Yeah,
formerly CBS All Access,
which I just canceled, and then found out they put all of Guts and all of Legends of the Hidden Temple on there. And why did I cancel it?
Yeah.
I can tell you why I canceled, because it didn't work for 2 months for me.
Yeah. kind of ineffective. But it reminded me. So there's a similar plot line where one of the characters in that show, spoiler alert, becomes like the navigation system for the ship.
You're talking about an L3 style thing?
Wait, say that again?
L3 from Solo? L3?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of an incredible thing that I like, parallel that I never noticed. But
Yes.
Let's not dismiss what happens in Solo, guys.
Yeah. It's basically Solo 2. Make Solo 2 happen. No, it reminded me a little bit of that, where it's like this kind of like organic navigation system, and it made me uncomfortable when I saw it on Star Trek. It made me uncomfortable here. And like you said, yes, if there was going to be kind of this moral compass of the Nihil, I thought it would be him, but it's clearly not. And that was kind of a little bit of a shocker, but I still don't know his full intentions, because the way he speaks, it's kind of like, I'm not one of them. I'm just kind of self-serving my purpose. But yeah, it was a bit of a. It made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's funny. I read exactly the same what you both did, and it felt like he had that trigger finger to shock her more. But I guess it felt like there was more now to him that made him more interesting. Not necessarily making me feel for him more, because obviously I'm not relating to him, but it made him a bit more interesting. That later on in this section in chapter 28, where we're along with Kassav and the rest of those members of the Nihil, that was like, ooh, I feel the way, Sam, you had talked about before, that this whole villain group of insurgents or scavengers or whatever we call them, I found them to be kind of boring, as they were all trying to ransom the planet and being like, hey, yeah, and doing their drugs, and it just it reminded me of the faceless group of other guys from that Star Trek J.J. Abrams one. But yeah, that's but this one, it was Martian Row, I'm more into now.
See, this is why this is so wild, Mike. Because I feel like, and I'm not. I don't know how much we each enjoyed each chapter, and I enjoyed this section out of the book a lot, actually. But see, I enjoyed that chapter, and I found it. I liked the. I think this, like, the fact that the book was unequivocally singling Kassav out. Or Kassav, however you say his name, as like the moron of the group, the brute. It didn't add depth, and if anything, it subtracted depth, but in a way that I found entertaining. In a way that I was like, it added depth maybe to the group of villains, where it's like he's resentful of how each of the other of the three, Tempests. Tempest leaders, run or captains run their Tempest or whatever, and it added that level, and I was like, it also allowed me to like picture who these guys were, in a way that I enjoyed, and vilify them. But back to the chapter we're on.
But I can definitely see what you're saying, Sam, because I think I'm not factoring in like maybe what that chapter was saying about him. It's more of just the presentation of who they are, and I think I'm having just recently read it. I didn't think as much about that and his mistake, and we'll get to that as we get into it later. But it was just more of like, and Sam, clearly you're riding the storm. But the whole let's take our drugs. Let's all.
The only way to fly, my man.
What is it? They're listening to their wreckpunk. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
wreckpunk.
Wreckpunk. Yeah. And I just felt like, I'm like, all right, so we got a bunch of just drugged out meathead nihils, and that just didn't appeal to me. But there's more to it. You're right. Yeah. There is definitely more to it. But glad you're riding the storm, Sam.
Oh, every night, man. It's how I stay free. But back to the chapter we were on. Let's talk about Mari Santeca, because I found, this is new for Star Wars. This characterization, this trait, I'll call it power. But so what they've established so far in the book is that there are these existing hyperlanes, and that's, you go if you go into hyperspace, if you make the jump to light speed, you go in one of these prescribed lanes. It's it's an expressway. You know that there's going to be tractor trailers on it, and you fall in line, and they're kept clear. And what they're establishing is like it seems like they're kind of establishing this is the precursor to what we know as hyperspace travel in the Star Wars series, which is that you run calculations to avoid running into a star or a moon or something and end your trip pretty quick. And it seems like there's this woman who is kind of a savant and explorer at finding these, and she's become ancient. And I could read a whole book just on her and her family.
There's some kind of empathic knowledge to how the solar system works and the stars work. I think I've probably have said this 1,000 times on the podcast, where it's the universe of Star Wars has always been kind of void of the technology that enables them to be in space without danger. It's never mentioned. It's never thought about. We take it all for granted. I think it is an interesting realm in Star Wars to put all the characters in a position where it's like, this is new stuff. This is like, them figuring out hyperspace. They still get a rush from hyperspace, and they're like, we'll later find out the drugs try to mimic the effects of hyper. Like, I think that's a very interesting angle to take, and it's kind of an interesting thing to explore, where it's like, all right, now we're hitting a point where the technology of Star Wars is new to both the characters and us, which I don't think we've ever really seen before.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I really like that, Chris. And I like that there is an organic component to it. There's a human element that's like that doesn't exist on Earth, right? There's not. I guess you could go back to early explorers and conquistadors who claim to I sail by my nose and following the stars and the taste of the salt on the air or whatever. But it's like this is more complex and more sci-fi, more weird. It's really cool.
But if this
it is very. Oh, go ahead.
I would say, if this is the precursor to what we know as hyperspace travel later on in Star Wars, how are they not all running into each other like they ran into the Legacy Run? Because the impression I'm getting in these chapters is they talk about, as our buddy Serge, as we're going to get to in just a moment, describes that there was the lightning within the hyperspace lane that connected with the Legacy Run. Seems to imagine that was the Nihil or the ship which they're currently on in this chapter, the Gaze Electric. That is how the Legacy Run had to move and then break apart. So it would imply that there could be any chance that someone else could cross over in your hyperspace lane and cause disasters. So maybe that's something that could be answered in another book or down the road, where they're like, oh yeah, and collectively figured out that we know how the hyperspace lane is occupied. I don't know, but that was one of the questions I had when they started to kind of get into that in this version. I do want to ask, Marie Santeca, I felt like it was interesting to me that the veil was pulled back on Martian Row a bit, because we had this mystery. They're like, he's got the paths. He knows how to find the paths. And then what we realize is that it's not him. He's got Marie Santeca, and also how absolutely delicate his power is and how easily stripped away it could be for him. Now, at the end of this chapter, he seems to come to some sort of epiphany that we're not clued into about what he can do to help bring all his plans together. But it's just interesting how this is a very frail old woman, but also a very frail power structure for him.
I loved that element. I thought that was I think a great. He's bluffing. Right. He has a pair of twos, or he has nothing in his hand, and he's going up against people who, they'll cut your head off. Like, it's a pretty. It kind of gives some. I don't know. It lends some. Bravery, I guess, to his play. Or maybe it's just out of desperation, His back is so far against the wall that it's like, well, he's willing to take this risk. But I liked that element a lot. They
also kind of like not raise the stakes, but they kind of they lay it out quite a bit where it's like one of these three factions could turn on each other if the other two gang up. Like the author is clearly like mentioning like there is such a fine balance here, but it's all just about what you have, and the second you don't have that, you're at risk.
Well, we get a little bit more of the Nihil as we go on, but in our next chapter, this is where we are back with our gang on Elfrana, and we're finding out a little bit more about Bell and Loudon and what they're going to do with the Blade of Bardata, as he's called, and a little bit of the setup as they're making their way towards the homestead that is outside of Ogden's Hope, where they're going to try to find out what's happening with the Blythe family. But it's Porter who is the other Jedi who's with them, and I think there's one other, Ikaruki, I believe. It's hard to pronounce all of the names.
So many names.
But with you're so many names and so many new characters, I keep on feeling like I'm like, wow, you know what? They're painting an interesting picture, and I like learning about Marie Santeca, but this is always with some new, and then we get a kind of a news section about Jedi that we've already met before, but we hadn't spent that much time with.
The pace of the chapters may have slowed down, but the increase of characters kept going.
Well, which is
I miss the days when characters are called like Han Solo.
I have to imagine when people early on explained the original Star Wars, some people call it A New Hope, that are like, his name is Han. What? like there's probably C-3PO. How long do you think before that became lexicon? Maybe 2 decades.
Honestly, with Star Wars, honestly, I think Chris is probably like a weekend.
Okay,
but,
yeah.
But I think
You're right.
I think it's the prequels. Bail Organa.
Yeah, exactly.
I should correct myself. I meant to say Indira is the other Jedi. So the 4 Jedi who are going in, and she's the one who is flying the ship, which is another version of the Vector. It's the Vanguard, meant for ground travel. And the thing that I enjoyed most about this, because I feel like this chapter is interesting, but it's sort of just setting up the rest of what we're about to see as they make their arrival at the homestead, is I really enjoyed the mole mines. I just, the visual picture in my head of the mole mines coming at them was like mini tremors on their way, and they'd pop out of the ground. And the way that they talked about Bell used, skills that he wasn't even sure how that intrinsic moment happened, but yet Porter is just doing it on his own. Like, yep, easy. Let me slash through all of these as they fly out of the ground. No problem whatsoever. And I loved that aspect of this chapter, which, again, as much as there's new characters and new things going on all the time, I really was like, oh, wow, each chapter keeps on having a little nugget that is sparking my imagination.
Yes, this
Porter
was very...
Angle.
Yep.
Porter Angle is such a dope character. Like, just the guy who's like so old, who has no business being as fast as he is. I mean, it's like that's such a classic cinema trope, and I don't know if it's also a literary trope. I don't read enough. I'm a movie guy, but like I love that. I can immediately picture countless times we've seen this character in cinema, and it's like every time it's a home run for me. Yeah, every single time.
Yeah, this was definitely one of the more... Every now and then in this book, I've noticed there's kind of like a cinematic chapter, and you can definitely see the camera following the mines to the Jedi, or the little moles going down the ground. It's just a fun chapter, and I love that the inference here, though. I like by the end of the chapter, it's kind of like, all right, well they laid these mines, that means they've already moved on, which I think is like. You get caught up in the action, and you're like, oh yeah, like they could do this. It's not a trap. They're not waiting for someone. That means they're gone.
Well, we've been building to Jedi meeting the Nihil. We've had like these conversations like, oh, are the Nihil even ready? Are they scared? Should they be scared?
Yeah.
And we keep on waiting for this to come together. And as you talk about it, if it were a scene from a movie, you'd be like, oh wow, here's this big battle moment. I'm ready for it. And then it kind of pulls the rug out from under you because you think they're in the battle with the mole mines, and the mole mines are just there because they're trying to delay them because they've already left. And yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was a neat touch.
I like this whole plot line. I think it's a classic Western, quiet out on the range, assembling the posse to go, when somebody rustles up some trouble. And it's,
right.
I mean, look, I don't know if anybody's ever pointed out that Star Wars is kind of a Western, but
that's the first time I've
never heard
but
that.
I do think it actually works really well here, as much as I roll my eyes at that like kind of simplistic.
It's fine.
Trope.
I love a good Western.
Yeah, westerns are awesome. So
there's nothing wrong with it.
Well, I mean, that pretty much covers that chapter, because otherwise, again, talking about the ships with the Vanguard, there's the speeder, the V-Will. They seem to run into some challenges they weren't expecting. As much as they can reach out in the Force, they weren't ready to see the mole mines. And that's just kind of them fighting those off, and Loudon and Bell really just admiring Porter's skill. I thought it was nice that it was like not Bell who was just transfixed, that Loudon was as well, which told you more, because we know Bell as a Padawan, so much will be new to him and exciting. But Loudon's been around the game for a while.
Yeah, it kind of spoke volumes. I do like I just mentioned the pace that they're mentioning characters. The pace that they describe vehicles is also ever increasing. It's like they're giving us the vehicle nicknames. Like I need a diagram.
Well, they need to establish enough vehicles in the book so that if it ever gets made into a series, they can sell enough toys.
Exactly. I'm waiting for the visual dictionary now.
Well, yeah, I think the visual dictionary for a book must exist, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just called a dictionary.
We move on to Chapter 26, and the Salvation Class Republic Medical Frigate, Panacea, I guess? Not Pangea, Panacea.
Yeah, Panacea.
This is where we get our good buddy Wookie Buryaga, who no one understands except his master Nib, and their nice moment of trying to mingle. And it's fascinating because I was intrigued who they're mingling with. Is it just the survivors of Hetzel? But then you find out it's those who've survived from the Legacy run and the emergences. I think the thing in here that I really enjoyed was, I was like, am I Buryaga out of the pandemic, or am I Joss Adrin? And am I coming up to people being like, you would be dead.
Right.
If it wasn't, you were like 1 second away from being dead.
Yeah, they
I think I might do that. My skills sometimes struggle.
They had a little too much blue milk, and they started
fermented blue milk.
Yeah, they started speaking off the cuff a little bit.
But I wanted to jump
in.
Moment.
I wanted to jump in because I didn't want to speak up if I was wrong. But panacea is a medical term. It's a Greek term, and what it actually means is it's a solution or remedy for all difficulties or diseases. Pan meaning like all encompassing. So panacea is like a medical term. So the fact that it's a medical frigate, that's like kind of cool. I don't know. I guess they have Greek in Star Wars, huh?
Did I pronounce it correctly?
I think you did. Yeah, it looks. I'm reading it. It looks like it's pronounced panacea, which I think is what you said.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting how it's Chancellor So's like earliest great work is what they say. Like, so the new Starlight Beacon is her legacy, but this was one of her first things that was a big deal as she was making her way in the galaxy.
Interesting.
Hey, let me tell you something. Big deal.
Hey, you know what? You know what I say to that? So what?
All right, well, that's two bad jokes. Mike, do you have one?
Yeah, and that'll
Women
do
always
it
know.
For the droid you're looking for. Star Wars. We'll end here. This is it. Just read the rest of the book. It's great. I'm sure. Yeah, exactly. Cue up the sound. Wow.
But
it's been a good 4 years. Ryan, sorry you couldn't join this one, but
couldn't join the swan song. Well, the rest of this chapter is really Chewbacca giving Buryaga.
Oh boy, okay.
I just think,
and that'll do it.
That will do it. Buryaga giving a nice big Wookiee hug to our boy Serge from earlier in the book, and it just made you think that if anyone was ever going through a moment of grief, what a Wookiee hug would mean. I mean, it's so comforting.
You
The
could
way they
literally
describe it,
you could feel
felt
it when
better.
you read it. Yeah, you could feel it when you read it.
That they have. I mean, Ryan Johnson famously said, when he hugged, Jonas on set, he's like, do you know what hugging Chewbacca's like? It's not like hugging a gorilla or orangutan. It's like hugging a dog, and that whole, and everybody kind of went, awe and everything. But there is something interesting because this book is establishing how different Jedi experience the Force differently, whether it's a wave or a song, a wave for Elzar, and Avar experiences it as a song. And I think it's very interesting that the Wookiee, which again, we kind of equate to perhaps a sentient or more accessible to, dog, into its human emotion, and is kind of man's best friend in this case, in a really, really sweet way that it's like, and I'm not somebody who has a dog, but I know dogs, and it's like, if you grew up with dogs, you know that like the dog knows when you're sad. How's the dog know? You can't tell, but it knows. Yeah. And that's kind of like a neat way to have Burryaga's special relationship to the Force revealed in this book. I like that a lot. Yeah,
they kind of mention he's not able to fully lift all the problems away, but he can lift some of the stress away using the Force, which I thought was a cool detail to like. It's a very nuanced thing where it's like he's going to make you feel better, but it's not like he's not taking away the core issue. That's still on the person to figure out, but it's like some of that weight's a little bit lifted. And I think that's a good metaphor for a Wookiee hug.
I also thought it was interesting, and we'll get back to kind of what we learned from some Surge, but earlier on in the chapter, talking about how he's treated as someone, as a Wookiee who doesn't speak, Galactic Basic? Is that what they call English in Star Wars? That he can kind of observe and listen because people will say anything thinking that he doesn't understand because he doesn't speak the same language. And it felt like it was almost a reference to a way that some people, who might be immigrants in our country get treated. And the way that they're treated is like, oh, no, they're not. I can say anything I want because they're not like the rest of us. And it was subtle in the way that it did it, but it was just, again, how much of an outsider he feels like by not knowing the language. And I just thought that was an interesting point that they made to have it be sort of an advantage for him in gaining information, but also still an insult that he was treated that way.
I think your read on it is dead on, Mike. I think that I think this book is really smart and subtle enough when it needs to be. I think it's doing what Star Wars has always done, which is Star Wars is always political. Star Wars has always been progressive. Star Wars has always been on the side of the little guy, the everyman, the person against the big machines and the totalitarianism and everything. And this book is very much in that vein and being true to those roots, but in a way that is subtle, that doesn't slam you over the head with it. And I think it's pretty brilliant in how it's laying that stuff out.
So Surge, we find out, we knew that he was getting into the holodecks, getting into some trouble with the holovids, trying to find the R-rated stuff.
Yeah, he's trying to bootleg those movies, right?
Yeah, he was trying to get those early on in the book. Here, we find out that he was playing a little bit of a prank, being a prankster on the Legacy run. He wanted to put some videos up on the holovid screens on the bridge, and then he saw what happened to the ship, and he felt like he was maybe responsible. Burryaga takes that away, but he felt like he did something wrong that might have caused the ship to crash.
Horrible.
It's really upsetting.
You're responsible for the lives of billions of people.
It's really upsetting. Do you guys think that they call, like, in this galaxy, do you think that they watch holos called Earth Wars?
yes, I do. Yes. It's all about us doing this podcast.
What would they say? A long time in the future, many futures ago. I don't know.
A near time ago in the future, close away, close by,
close
by.
Close.
It's really hard to do, Mike. I was impressed with you.
I can't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. But then we kind of get a sense that he saw the lightning. He saw 3 lightning strikes, which did that mean the same to both of you?
Well,
that's the Nihil? That's
for
sure.
Also, you know what that reminded us all of?
J.J. Abrams Star Trek.
Sheevy Palpatine. Little Sheevy.
Yeah, he's just been waiting in hyperspace lanes. He's sitting there floating, waiting for a ship to come by, and then he goes,
You know what the ship hit? It hit Sheev. The sheave has hit the ship.
Wait, the sheave ships the fan?
The sheave ships the fan. That's it.
Yeah, the ship has hit the sheave. Yeah. We're all getting there.
Well, we just know that lightning is associated with bad stuff.
I was thinking of a Sith riding the front of another ship and just shooting lightning out. But
yeah.
Ooh, that's pretty rad. I like that imagery.
Well, we go back to Elfrana, and now we're spending time with the Blythe family that is captives of the Nihil. And we get some nice shenanigans. I love when the father's name is Ada, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Oda or Oda. Yeah. When he does his clicks and makes all of the beasts stop at once, and then one of the Trandoshans flies in and cracks her skull, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool imagery.
Yeah.
It was very Sam Peckinpah. It was like lull you into like you've seen a Western before. Here's some gruesome violence.
This chapter was a little dark. Where it's like I didn't know the sound of a cracked skull, but I knew that was it.
Yeah,
I was like, whoa, okay.
Well, and then they also described
metal
when the father Oda was hit by the rifle. And the pain that he was feeling, and like he wasn't dead, but might have been if there was one more. And then there's a book series. Harlan Coben is an author who does a bunch of like missing people books, and the way that he always writes pain is very detailed, probably too much detail, like beyond what it should be. But this chapter reminded me of that, where it's just like the searing heat of the pain wouldn't leave their face, and
they give you one more for the road. Yeah.
But it was a nice slow build of the Jedi approaching. And then also with the help of the family taking out a few of the Nihil, you'd think they're going to be in good shape to rescue everyone, even though the parents seem to be pretty certain that they're all doomed.
Yeah. It was a little bit of a false hope, like, because we kind of knew behind the scenes what was going to happen. But I think in this chapter, I was just kind of waiting for the Jedi, essentially.
Yeah. It's a good thing that they said this was an adult book. I've been catching up on the Clone Wars, and when clones are killing clones because of misdirection by generals, I don't think kids need to see that, or when they're about to execute one of their own.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
This is why you classify. You got the young adult, you got the adult. But I'd imagine a lot of people just pick up a book, they don't even really think about the age group for it.
No, yeah. I mean, I didn't, and I was like, whoa, what are some of these words?
Well,
kidnappers? What does that even mean? It's like 12 letters.
Well, we'll find out what happens to the Blythe family soon enough, but we'd have to think, 3 highly competent Jedi against a couple of Nihil. This is going to end badly for the Nihil.
That's the one fun thing that's baked into Star Wars, and in part of the problem and part of the solution is that it's like a Jedi shows up. You're just like, well, this is probably going to go well for the Jedi. But when it doesn't, that's what makes it really interesting.
That was always what was interesting about The Mandalorian, is that to have no real Jedi presence and the fear that you felt when those bots were coming for them on the bridge, and then the way that Luke tears through them, you're like, oh yeah, I guess I shouldn't be afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't believe Luke shows up at the end of this chapter.
He's just in every bit of Star Wars ever. Every comic book
every
from now ends with, and there was Luke.
And it truly was the Luke Skywalker.
Well, chapter 28, the final chapter of this section that we're reading. We already talked a bit about it. Yeah, the Kassav, however you pronounce his name, and his group in the New Elite. And they're trying to ransom the planet of Eridu, hold it hostage, and make their own money. And then Kassav's thinking he's on his way out. He doesn't need to be part of the Nihil anymore if he gets his $50 million and runs for it. But things, they don't go well.
Kind of backfires on him a little bit.
This chapter was like one of my favorite. I think I texted you guys because I read this section very quickly, right on the heels of our last record. And I think I texted you guys just like, oh man, I can't wait for you to read this part. Because there's something about, it's the classic thing of a villain being hoisted by their own petard is so satisfying. And you're just watching this guy just clearly a complete moron and thinking and there's something very entertaining about like morons who think they're not morons, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was loving it. There's some goofy stuff where they're listening to wreckpunk, and it's like outside of jizz, we've never talked about music in Star Wars, you know?
Well, we got our buddy Lin-Manuel Miranda over at Maz's Kanata.
Exactly.
Booga. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I just
That's good.
Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We should start our own jizz band.
Jabba.
This is why I'm the intern. I'm not on the wavelength that you guys are. But I really enjoyed this setup, and you just the constant mounting. What is it? Dramatic irony, where it's like you as the reader know.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going so wrong so soon, and you're just waiting. And then when it all does, it's like it'd be comedic if it weren't so messed up, you know?
Yeah. And it's literally like a 1, 2, 3. It's he swings once, he swings twice, and then his overconfidence is his weakness. And then he's like, "Wait, what happened?"
Anybody become a big fan of Wet Bub after this chapter?
Yes, yeah, the Gungan.
The Gungan who's covered in blood.
It's pretty rad.
I like the line where it's the name must not. No one died when they called him that, so the name must not have upset him.
Yeah.
It's a good.
He's like, I'll take that.
Yeah, speak of a Western. That's a great little log line.
It's so wreckpunk.
Yeah. So I think we should establish wreckpunk on the podcast. This is a wreckpunk podcast, right?
Yes. We're part of the wreckpunk pod network.
Yes. I like
sort
that.
of a pirate radio thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, this chapter, all action, a very fun read, but ultimately, just kind of twisting the evil valve here of it's kind of, and I agree, based on our prior, like there's a separation of Manchurian Row and this guy. It's kind of like, I think of Bart Simpson, where it's like Bart Simpson is bad on paper, but he's not like a bad kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's not. Yeah, there's the episode where he steals something and he feels terrible about it. He's not that kind of bad, and I think we have a little bit of that going on.
He's not nihilistic. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Tell that to the mama bird he shoots with a BB gun.
Okay, I forgot about that.
Guys, my dad told me a story when he was a kid, him and his brother,
allegedly
at my Graham's house. His brother Pete, they had like a toy bow and arrow, a real bow and arrow, but it was like, it was a big lot. There was like a couple acres out behind my Graham's house, and so they like had this bow and arrow, and they were just like shooting it, and they shot an arrow. Like and like they missed the target or whatever, but they hit a rabbit, and it like came around days later with an arrow still in it.
No,
and it was so messed up. And my dad was like, my dad's brother Pete. He's like, he's a hunter and kind of woodsman and always been into that stuff. And my dad was like, I could never hunt. I was so upset by the rabbit incident that like I could never do it.
No.
I don't know what made me think of that.
Sometimes you miss the target and you hit a rabbit. Other times you miss the target and 1.2 billion people die.
1.2 billion, yep. I like how they're like, 1.2 billion, not our problem. See ya.
Oh, well.
When they ghost on it, it's played for kind of comedic effect, and it sort of works. It's a little funny when they like are like, oh shit, peace out.
Way to go, Wet.
I like how he has to grovel
Punch
back.
It, Wet Bub.
He has to grovel back to the Nihil. He's like, I'm out. I'm on my way. Yeah. And he's like, I guess back.
Well, now he has 50 million credits.
Yeah. But I think, Sam, I know you've read a little bit further ahead than Chris and I. Do we think that the comeuppance will come in the form of this governor and the planet of Eridu chasing him down, Governor Merle Veen, or is he going to get his comeuppance in another way? Or are they just not going to address it?
I think it'll come up in another way. within the clan. I think.
Yeah, that could be.
Like I think he's
well, yeah, because he's
breaking
going to
the
share his $50 million.
Exactly. I think he's breaking the rules a little bit. He's got a little bit of he's overstepping his boundaries, and I think he's not respecting, even though they're an evil organization, he's not respecting the organization. And I think it doesn't.
This organization does not tolerate failure, Kassav.
Exactly. I think he will be reprimanded, but in his own way.
Well, that does it for the 5 chapters this week for The Light of the Jedi. We appreciate those of you who've hung around waiting for more discussion of the book, because we know we've taken some time off from it. But we're hoping to power through here. We've only got, I think, another 15 chapters to go. So we're on our way. And also we'll be ready for the next iteration of the main storyline of High Republic, which is the June book that comes out called The Rising Storm. I have to say one thing I've taken away from the whole book, but also from these chapters, I want to read more Charles Soule. Like, I like the way he writes. I really enjoy it.
I'm very much so digging the writing style, and also, it is a good read. I mean, I think, and no discredit to anyone that's a fan of any of the books or anything like that, but I mean, I personally kind of always approach these with like a little bit of like a little asterisk, like let's see what we're getting into. And then, I mean, this one I've been very pleasantly surprised, though. I feel like it's been on point for Star Wars, and also just like as a book, it's very well written, and it moves so far. So I'm very happy to read it.
I think I am, at least on this call, the person who's read the most like Star Wars novels at this point. And it's been a mixed bag. There have been some that I really, really struggled to get through. From authors that people seem to like, this is, I think, of all of them, this is the best written. And it still has, for me, some of those chapters that don't quite land, that don't quite work, that are a little slow. But I do think we talked a little bit about the subtlety that he's bringing to some of like the more sort of social commentary that's in there. That's very Star Wars to me. And the way he writes action. It's of all the things I've ever read, of all the Star Wars novels in particular I've ever read, the scenes where he hits the action feels the closest to watching Star Wars action. And that's really, that's impressive.
Yeah.
He's got great geography in his description. Like, we talk about geography of a scene a lot, especially in action. And I think we've mentioned this before while we've been talking about this book, but it's very easy to understand where everybody is in his action scenes.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah.
That's a great way to... I don't know if I was here for that, but that is very true.
Well, I think that's pretty much going to do it, unless, guys, anything else we want to talk about before we wrap up this edition of the pod?
I want to throw one thing out, just because on a separate note, since this is a book episode, I want to throw out... so I recently have been reading... I'm reading Charles Dumas's, Charles Dumas. That was a professor at Penn State. Alexander.
I was saying, I had him as a professor. As well.
Ooh,
Alexander.
He's also an actor. He's an actor, right?
He is. Alexander Dumas's Count of Monte Cristo, and I'm reading it because
is that a new book?
There's a comic book artist and writer who I really like, Ibrahim Mustafa, and he's at Ibrahim_M_art on Instagram, and he has written and drawn an entire graphic novel called Count that's based on the Count of Monte Cristo, but I think it would particularly appeal to our listenership because the whole update is making it a space opera. So rather than being set sort of in, post-revolution France, in, Marseille, it's set in space. And so I'm reading the original novel, and I just got actually a signed copy of the graphic novel that is I've leafed through just to see the art, and it's gorgeous. So check out.
How can our listeners win that?
No. But I wanted to call attention because Ibrahim's he's an independent comic book artist and writer, and so this is like his own work, and you can get it at comic shops, and it really truly is. There's like undeniable Star Wars-y stuff to it, at least his take. And, look, who doesn't love a great classic revenge tale, So
Right.
I would just encourage everybody to check it out, or at least check out like the artwork from it and see kind of some of the nods to sort of Star Wars and some of the stuff we love, because it's been fun.
That's awesome.
So it's a free book reco.
Yeah, good plug. We'll put the details in the description.
Oh, great. Yeah. I'll send them.
Perfect. Well, that is going to do it for this week's edition of the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Guys, we're under, an hour. This was a tight pod. I wonder why. Was there something missing that maybe made this a very more focused?
Yes, you're right. New Sam was not here.
You're right. Yeah, new Sam is there.
Yeah.
New Sam doesn't know Star Wars and may not continue watching Star Wars. You watched one. Have you heard the interview, Sam?
I'm sort of... Well, look, I don't want to...
Do you listen to the pod?
I don't...
Do you ever listen to the pod?
I don't... I'm having a real hard time that sort of the name that New Sam is giving Sam's everywhere. And maybe he and I will meet sometime. And all I'd say is, listeners, just be glad you're not going to be in the room.
We'll put a poll up to see which one people like better.
Okay,
Sam,
we don't need to do any polls. We don't need to find that out. It's better not knowing.
Yeah,
No.
we'll get that going.
New Sam has 75,000 followers on TikTok, so I don't know if you want to go up against that battle.
Yeah, well...
What? I'm sorry. What's a TikTok, Michael? Can you show me on my phone?
Yeah. Get on our TikTok.
I'll check it out on TikToks tomorrow.
TikTok, what is that, a watch?
Nailed it, Chris.
Well, speaking of the time, we've reached the end.
Do it.
And enjoy your celebration to all our droid heads out there. The 4-year celebration.
Guys, happy anniversary. Truly, it's quite a feat. We lasted 4 years. That's it. That's all I got.
I wouldn't change a single thing about the last 4 years. Wait. I mean, on the podcast, I wouldn't change a single thing about the last 4 years. I changed a lot of things about the last.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would have invested in Microsoft.
But be sure to listen on Apple iTunes and your iPhones.
Yeah.
Well, join us next week. We're going to go into more chapters of Light of the Jedi, discuss any more breaking news. But that is going to do it. Chris, what's the 5-year podcast anniversary gift when we get to next year? Because there's got to be a pretty big gift.
Maybe like a plaque, or we'll get a commemorative statue.
Shouldn't that happen?
Word? That's an Uncle Joey reference.
Yeah.
What happens first? Our 200th episode or our 5-year? I think it's the 200 because we're already at 164, so we're getting there.
Yeah, we should be done by the end of this year, right? If we do 2.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Wait, no, 52 weeks. How many weeks in the year? I don't know.
Where are we at this point? No.
I don't. It all kind of
we'll
blurs together.
We'll probably hit 200 early next year.
You guys are really crushing the sign off, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to talk about these things.
Yeah, I mean, this is the what do we say? This is the Patreon content. This is Droids Pod Plus. This is what you're getting.
Droids Pod Plus, exactly.
Droids Pod.
Sam doesn't know about. He doesn't know about
giving
that.
Each other mass problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sam, you don't get a cut of that.
Oh, that'll do it for the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. This time, we're actually signing off. Just for this episode. We'll be back. There's no powering down. Don't worry about it.
What they Honey?
Yeah, you boys want to throw on some wreckpunk and go hold the planet hostage?
I want to ride the storm.
Oh, that's what it should have been.
You boys
want to ride the storm?
Ride the storm at medieval times.